Okay, Jesse, I'm going to add a couple extra things onto basically the last video where you learned how to kind of freehand draw some shapes. This one's going to focus more on line, arc, and gems on curve. So line we actually talked about in the last one, but I'm going to show you how you can do something. It's kind of like a little cheat for not having outside ring rail. So let's go here to our main menu under tools. We have this outer or inside ring rail, and we can make it any size we want. So if you recall when I was showing you the outside ring rail, basically all it controlled was the height at noon, 3 and 6, and it assumed that 3 and 9 were the same. But we learned about this handy dandy tool called line. This is a personal issue. I like to see these lines on this yellow creation layer. It really doesn't matter as long as you know what layer you like and you use that one. So in the last video we talked about these O snaps. Sorry. So we're going to turn those on, and really we need them set on quad. So quad allows something to connect at the 4 quadrants of a circle. So in this particular case, it's perfect because we actually want to set a distance at noon, 3, and 6 o'clock. So before you saw we typed line, and we started a line, right? And maybe we started it here and we came up. We're actually going to do something a little different this time. Instead of just clicking where we want it to end, we're going to type in our distance. So we're going to start there. And then we're actually going to type in how long we want that line to be. So you can see it says end of line. We're going to type in 2. So that would make that line 2 millimeters long. If we want it to be a perfectly straight line, I was perfectly straight, but I guess I should say perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal, we're going to hit shift. So let me move my cursor over. You can see it snaps to either north or south or east or west, depending on what angle I was already holding it at. So if you're anywhere near up and down and hit shift, hold it down, left click, and you now have a perfectly straight line at 12 o'clock. That's 2 millimeters long. So really what the other thing did was it picked height here, here, and here. We're going to go around and just build a line at the height we want. So we're going to come to this quadrant and make this one 1.7. So again, same thing applies. If you hold down shift and left click, there we have our 1.7 millimeter line, and at the very base, let's go ahead and make this one 1.5. Shift, left click. It doesn't have to be those specific measurements. I'm just choosing those so that I have something to key in that's not the same distance all the way around. So offset would work great if it was the same distance all the way around. In this case, we actually have something that tapers in height. So we're going to come to this other side here. This one was 1.7, so we're going to make that 1.7 over here as well. And so you can kind of see we have a guide for where we want our outer line to be, which brings us to our next command, arc, A-R-C. It should be here in curves. Yes, so arc is a little funny in that it gives you a couple different options. I don't know why the default is to start at the center of the arc, and then it has you go to the start, and then you can see it's building the arc is nowhere near the first point I clicked, which to me doesn't make any sense. So I like, oh, and I don't know if you've noticed this. If you right click, it pulls up the last command you were using, which is kind of convenient. So you don't have to keep typing things in or keep finding the buttons. So I like to use this start point. So you can see here I can click this, or I can hit S because S is underlined. And now it's asking me where should my arc start. So I'm going to have it start here. I'm going to have it snap to the end of that line. I'm going to have it end snapping on this line and point on the arc. You can see anywhere I click kind of tells it how to build that arc. I'm going to click at the end point of that one. So you can see it built me a perfect arc that keeps it at the height of those lines. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the bottom of the ring. So snap, oh, not center of arc, start point. Here to here, and this is our point on the line. If for some reason you started and you weren't doing what you wanted, you can always just hit escape. So now I have a top and bottom of an outside ring rail, but I need them to be one piece. I'm going to select both parts and type in join. It's pretty intuitive. In fact, if you're ever unsure of a command, guess something that sounds similar, and you got a 50-50 chance of finding a command that exists. So basically, you wanted to, for example, split a line in half. Start typing in split. You will get lucky. And then I don't need these lines anymore. I'm going to go ahead and delete them just so they're out of the way. So now I have an outer ring rail, and that's just another way of doing it that isn't interp curve where it's a little more uneven. This I know is much more standardized, and I can control the exact height. So now that I have this line, I can put gems on my curve. So what I can do is I can come over to gems. This little S shape is my gems on curve. So I have a curve, I need gems on it. Let's say I'm going to make a diamond band. I'm going to drop my outer curve into this box. In this particular case, it thinks my line ends there, which it doesn't. That's a little more advanced on how to change that. It's not difficult to do. I just don't want to overload you with a lot of commands in the beginning. So you can see how I just move the start and end point. I can make those diamonds any size. Right now I have them kind of below that line. I can bring them above, whatever you'd like. But let's look at all 4 views. You can kind of see how I can adjust that. Put fewer stones that are larger, more stones that are smaller. I can have them come further around. I can have a shorter span. Right click when I'm done, whatever I want to do. So that's one very helpful use for Arc, but I'm going to show you something else as well. Something that you may even recognize. So this is your ring. So if you want to know how I built it, all I did was put in your finger size, which to be perfectly frank, I don't remember offhand. And if you start thinking about things that are 3-dimensional in 2-dimensional terms, it'll make it easier to start building things. So really all I needed was a ring rail and a profile. So if you look at this ring here, imagine you've cut it down the middle. What would that profile look like? So if we look at this shape here, it's actually not anything overly complicated. You now actually know every command that you would need in order to build this. You've got a line that snaps to a line, to a line, to a line, to an arc, to a line, to a line, to a line, to a line. Not a big deal. So you can kind of imagine how I could take a ring rail, and if I'm copying something that already exists, for example, let's type in line. Let's turn on our snaps. So let's say I'm making a ring that is 8 millimeters wide. So I would snap to this quad. I'd bring this line out since that's the middle of the ring. 4, enter, 4 millimeters out. So let's say this ring is overall 2 millimeters tall. I'd type 2 after I snapped there. And then I do another 4 or 4. I mean, I guess I could have done 8, right? 4, and then line to line. That's kind of like my basic layout, right? So now let's say I want to give it a little more of a pattern. Maybe it wants a beveled edge. I can actually kind of just draw a line like that and start connecting things. I can draw a line from here to here and here to there. So that's kind of like the edge of your ring. So let's say I know that the middle portion is 1.5 millimeters tall, but there's a 0.5 millimeter wide arc that sits in a groove. So that groove is, I don't know, let's make it 1 millimeter wide. So I do 0.5 here, 0.5 here, and now I don't even remember what I said, but let's say I have an arc that's half its width. And kind of see how I can snap lines together. Let's see, maybe I want that straight up. I just use shift. Whoop, I got hit arc. Line, use shift if I want it straight up and down, and then kind of snap those lines together. So this is looking a lot like the profile of your ring. Obviously this isn't exactly the same, but using just the commands you can see how you could build it. And then sweep. In this case, you only need to use sweep 1 because your ring is the same height all the way around. But if it wasn't, you know how to do that now with a couple different commands, your offset, interp curve, or an arc that you can connect to lines that you put at the 4 quadrants of your ring rail. And again, those same commands you can use on a profile as well. So hopefully these are things that you're finding helpful for future ideas. So for example, one of the most popular ring styles we do, one of the top 3, is a diamond halo ring. So if you look at something like this, they tend to cathedral upward. Well, everything we've built has been all the way around a circle. This is something a little unique, right? Because it arcs up as opposed to continuing all the way around. So you could use that arc button. Again, hit S for start of arc. And then you could offset it by 1.5 millimeters. And I could interp curve the rest of the way around. Again, this isn't going to be particularly pretty because there are commands that will get you something that looks a lot nicer. Let's offset this as well. Actually, you know what we should have done? We should have joined this and then offset it together. So you can kind of see how I'm building 2 rails. Let's go back to our picture. That I can now use to sweep to. I just got to put a profile either here at the base or here at the top. And then I can sweep to that piece and have that half of the ring. So again, we will go over future commands that will make this a little more seamless so you don't have these little gaps and these weird little points. But with what you know already, you can get a good rough CAD sketch of just about anything that we'll build.